Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast with hosts Clara and Jimmy Hinton. If you're new to the podcast, please look us up on your favorite podcast app, subscribe, like, and share so that you never miss an episode. If you'd like to further support us, visit patreon.com/speakingout and check out the different rewards. You'll find exclusive rewards if you sign up as a patron of the podcast. Thank you for your support, and let's get into the show. Welcome to this week's podcast. Thank you again to our patrons who make the podcast possible. We got several new patrons.
I know, I'm excited.
Last week, and
very excited about
very
that.
exciting.
Yes. Yeah.
So we'll plug it again. The reason we're getting new patrons is because we began this month back. October 18th. We began a training where we do abuse prevention trainings that are only available for our patrons at the $25 and up levels. That is legitimately exclusive. We are not releasing that to the public. They're very specialized. We've put a lot of time into them. And we do a monthly Zoom.
Right.
And it went really well. We loved it. Our patrons loved it. And we had really good interaction with our patrons.
Right.
So anyway, if you are interested, there is zero obligation. We are not people who hook people in and make people feel guilty. Literally, you can cancel anytime. It's month by month. You can log in, you can cancel any time.
But this
and you can
series
watch all
is Abuse in Plain Sight, mostly training for that, and it is incredible. It truly is. Jimmy,
it's very eye-opening. I promise you that.
Yes, he does a phenomenal job. It is well worth you taking this training. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
So on that note, thank you to all our new patrons.
Yeah, for sure.
Joining in on that. Yes.
But you can go back and watch the replays. So that's pretty cool too. Once you sign up as a patron, you can go watch the replay as many times as you want. Okay. We are this episode going to talk about school teachers. We kind of shift back and forth between talking about abusers in churches and abusers in the schools. And the reason we bring this up is I came across this article that was written, it was this year, 7 months ago. The title of the article is Public School Teachers 100 Times More Likely to Abuse Kids Than Catholic Priests. And if you think about that, I mean, we're right in the epicenter of the whole Catholic abuse scandal. We had the Pennsylvania grand jury investigation and report of 2018. That really began in 2016, just one county north of us, really 20 miles from here, with Sean Doherty. He was one of the pivotal people who reported and opened up a grand jury investigation into his abuse, and that was the Altoona-Johnstown Diocese.
Right.
Once that was published, there were abusers who, or not abusers, abused survivors who are crying out all across the state of Pennsylvania. Uh-oh, Granny's having
Granny's having a conniption fit here. I am so sorry.
Colds are going around this time of year. It's the fall
I'm telling you,
crud.
It is nasty right now.
So, they looked into the remaining Catholic dioceses in Pennsylvania, and that sparked a worldwide investigation into the Catholic Church. And I think it really highlighted just how pervasive sexual abuse is within the Catholic Church. And so this article, let me pull that up again here. Public school teachers 100 times more likely to abuse kids than Catholic priests. I'm going to read a little bit of this, just a couple paragraphs, but it says, as sexual abuse by teachers continues to rise, by the way, I think that sentence ought to make us shudder a little bit.
It does.
The problem's not getting better, it's getting worse.
No, and it clearly says, here's the issue. We have this going on.
It's huge
not going to get better.
In the schools. It's getting worse.
Yes.
Yeah. And again, this article was written this year, so it's not an outdated article. Sexual abuse in the schools is on the rise, period. As sexual abuse by teachers continues to rise, parents and students grow more concerned about the health and well-being of their families. The public education system has embraced grooming techniques that normalize sexual behavior and sexuality in children as young as preschool. All right, I'm going to stop there for a second because I put up this other article, and I'm going to go against the grain of a lot of people here, and I might offend people, and I'm not really concerned with that because I'm tired of hiding our opinions because we might offend somebody. Here's an article. Let's see, when was this written? Not that long ago. I think this was also this year. April 18th. Wisconsin teacher who performed for students in drag says he received outpouring of support. This is the kind of crap that, strangely, I see celebrated within the advocacy community. And I think, and it's not just the advocacy community, and it's not the advocacy community as a whole, but, this is all under the guise of tolerance and sexual education and all this nonsense. And listen, I think we all need to teach our kids to be incredibly kind and tolerant of people, regardless of how they identify, regardless of sexual orientation. We need to treat people fairly, with kindness, with compassion, period. There is zero room for bullying, discrimination, anything like that. What I have a problem with is this teacher, and I watched the disturbing video of him. This is at a school assembly. He puts this Twitter post up, and it's a video of him dressed. He has a wig. He has a slit dress where his butt cheeks hanging out, and he's up there dancing and shaking.
He's bare.
He's shaking his bare butt in front of these little kids. And in what sane world is that okay?
I don't know what it's trying to teach.
Right.
What is that trying to teach? That is promoting.
It's absolute
any kind
stupidity.
Right.
What it promotes is bizarre over-sexualization, confusing stuff to the kids. This has nothing to do with tolerance and, like I said, anti-bullying, kindness, all that stuff. It's just bizarre. It's just weird. So let me close that out because I don't really want to stare at this man in a dress twerking in front of kids. But you have this kind of stuff, and I think this article is absolutely right. You have public education system that's embracing these grooming techniques, normalizing sexual behavior. And let me be clear. I am dead against heterosexual teachers who identify as male and female getting up and grinding in front of kids and dancing and making out and being sexual in front of these kids. Like, it just, it doesn't make any sense. So anyway, I'm going to keep reading. Middle schoolers are now avidly taught about masturbation in class, while pornographic books remain in some public schools for the sake of quote-unquote diversity and inclusion. It's enough to make anyone wonder if this material is truly appropriate for children.
It's not appropriate.
No, it's not.
I'm going to interject my thoughts on that. A child that is, they're talking about as young as preschool, a child's mind is not geared towards that mentality.
That's exactly right.
At all. Not at all. What does a child do with the visuals of that, with the word language that goes with any of that? What happens in a child when a child is given that information, taught it? Then where do you go from there? Is it any wonder we have a society of really mixed up children?
Yeah,
really,
absolutely.
Is it any wonder?
But it also, it creates this perfect environment for disaster, for abuse to take place in the school, because all this sexualization is so normalized.
Right.
Because teachers have the backing of the teachers union, because teachers have tenure, because school boards still cover up abuse. We've talked about that a lot on this podcast. If you think that the majority of mandated reporters report abuse, think again. they're not even willing to call this stuff abuse. What this man
I
did in
was
front of
just
these
going to
kids is
say,
abuse.
yeah, it is. And
That,
I don't know how that is applauded.
can you imagine me getting up on a Sunday morning in front of the church, wearing a
No.
dress and a wig, split up with my butt cheek hanging out, and walking up in front of
I
kids on a
cannot.
stage
I
and
cannot.
shaking my
I
butt?
cannot. I
In what
really.
sane world
But
is that appropriate?
I just don't know the purpose of it. I
Right.
don't
It's just so
understand it.
bizarre.
And you're right. That is not how you teach tolerance and kindness and
No, there are
generous.
definitely other
No,
ways to
there
teach
are
it, and
much
this
other
isn't it.
ways to teach it.
This isn't it.
No.
So then here's another article. This is a from the Office of Justice Programs, U.S. Department of Justice, the branch Office of Justice Programs. This is an abstract, and I'm just going to read a couple sentences from this, and I'll link all these articles in the description. This one is a little bit dated. This was 2006, and I think the problem's gotten much worse. I couldn't find an updated version, so I don't think we're doing adequate research in this area. But here's what it says. Official statistics indicate that the majority of abusers are male and their victims are female. However, surveys of students show a much higher percentage of female abusers and male victims. Abusers typically target students who are deemed to be in need of attention and emotional bonding from an adult. Okay, so this raises a whole nother issue, and you're seeing this more and more in the news, where female teachers are
Sexting.
sexualizing their
yes.
students
Oh,
and
my,
having sex
yeah.
with them.
Absolutely.
And
Right.
this is happening more and more and more. The state of Texas released a study a couple years ago, and it showed there. I forget what the percentage of increase was in school teachers that were sexually preying on the students, but it was really significant and dramatic.
Well, Jimmy, don't you think too that the whole thing is snowballing when kids at a young age are introduced to all these sex identities and sexual perversions? Then they get to be 15, 16. You have a 22-year-old teacher come in and you put them in the classroom with cell phones and with which they're allowed, can shoot each other pictures back and forth and all that. It is a platform for abuse. It
Absolutely.
really is. It truly, truly is. Because here you have these young minds. Of course, they're thinking about that. That's exploding with all that. You have then the young female teacher prancing across the classroom, and it's not all. So people don't jump on me, but it happens. Let's face it.
Oh, it happens a lot.
It happens a lot. And what do you do when that's dynamite together? Just dynamite ready to explode.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a good scenario, and
No.
I think there's a reason why it's getting worse. Here's another article. This is from a law firm, the donanlawfirm.com. Again, I'll link to all these articles, but the title of this, Increasing Number of Female Teachers Found Sexually Assaulting Students. An alarming 10% of the high school population will be sexually assaulted before graduation. That's a fact. That's a given. A higher number of female students are sexually abused each year. A majority of perpetrators are men, males who sexually assault male and female students. In recent years, an increasing number of female teachers have been found sexually assaulting students. So here again, this verifies these studies are showing you're seeing this major uptick in female offenders with typically male students.
Sure.
And so you have to ask yourself, well, what's happening? Are people just reporting it more? Is there more attention in the news given to female offenders? I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is, like you said, it's a hypersexualization where our kids are taught, and there's something that's being awakened inside of our kids. And there are statistics on pornography that the average age of kids being introduced to pornography now, because every kid has a phone in their hand, is beginning at age 8.
That to me, that's heartbreaking. It really is. As a mother, as a grandmother, when I think of that going on, little kids should be little kids. They shouldn't be introduced to all this world of craziness. And I'm going to call it that because things are really crazy. There seem to be very few boundaries anymore. There, if you ask me what the moral code is, the standard of today, I wouldn't even know.
Exactly right. Yeah,
I don't know what the moral
it's
code is.
gray.
Yeah,
It's
I
nothing but gray.
really do not know. It's pretty much anything goes and accept anything.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think back to when I was a child, it was so different. I didn't have any knowledge of any of this and didn't need it, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't need it. The first bit of sexual information that I can think of that was given of any kind was in seventh grade,
Mm-hmm.
and in school.
Same
And
here.
I didn't need it. My mind wasn't there
Yeah.
at all. And here we have these children who are given all kinds of information
Mm-hmm.
at the ages of 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. They're little kids who are not allowed
And
to
kids being
think
put, little girls
like
being
little.
put on birth control at, starting at age
Oh,
9,
it's
10 years old, and told
crazy.
that
It's just, it's sad. To me,
basically
it's sad.
you're going to be having sex, so we're going to put
It
you on
really
this
is. It's
now.
sad, isn't it,
Uh-huh.
when you think about it? It really is. How confusing it must be for children.
I actually remember a lot about our sex ed class, and I thought it was adequate. I think it would still work today, honestly.
Oh, we could
It wasn't
never.
anything weird. It wasn't bizarre. It was they separated the boys and the girls,
Right.
which again, all this blurring of lines,
It
you can't
is.
even do that
It's
anymore
so confusing.
because that's not
Just confusing.
it's not appropriate or
Right,
whatever.
Right.
But that they talked about both male and female parts. It was very scientific,
Right.
and it was,
It was.
there weren't graphics, really graphic images and conversations and
Didn't need
speech.
it. We didn't
Exactly
need
right.
it, did
But we got the point. We were like, oh,
Right.
well, this is what these are what sex organs look like for the
Right.
male, and they were drawn on the
Right.
board. I remember, the
Yeah,
chalkboard,
I do too. Yeah.
and then they had posters up of like you see in a doctor's office,
Right.
and it showed, the different
Body
parts,
parts,
the
actually,
reproductive
with a
parts.
correct name. Yeah.
And they just explained, our science teacher explained how it happens, and I remember being like, oh, like
That's
yeah,
that's what
that-
happens.
right? That makes sense. I wasn't like,
Don't you think that today's world has taken away all that the childlike purity from children? They don't get to experience that. They've been
Yeah.
bombarded with all this mixed messages and information that by the time their bodies begin changing and all, I don't know what they must think. I
well,
really don't know.
I know what they think because you're seeing it in practice, and if you go to the CDC's website, you'll find some pretty alarming statistics on STIs and
It's a
STDs.
shame. It just,
We have an epidemic
I'll just
of
say it
sexually
again.
transmitted diseases.
I feel it's very sad.
What
to
happens
me.
is they're primed to go.
They're experimenting.
They're
Yeah.
they are wound up and ready to go because
Right.
they've been conditioned that
Right.
this is normal. It's normal to be hypersexualized and go out, explore, do what you want to do,
Do what feels good.
figure
That's
out,
it,
you know,
yeah.
like experiment and figure out if you like boys or girls and like,
I just read an article the other day that said that very thing. If you don't know, if you're confused which gender you like or which gender you are, experiment
Yeah.
until you figure it out. And
it's such a
it's very conflicting, very confusing.
it's very
We
confusing to a
all need boundaries, I believe. Without them, life is chaotic. We all need some kind of principles to live by. Without those, life again is just chaotic and there is no order. And we're seeing it displayed now in this way. We really
Absolutely.
are.
kid. Yeah, so, the point is that I think, it's not really a scientific researched method, and there's not a lot of research on it. I've looked. As far as causality, what causes this major increase, this major uptick in female teachers abusing kids, sexually assaulting kids? I think a lot of it's just, my feeling and my experience is it's exposure to sexuality, all things sexual. We have a hypersexual society, and it's celebrated.
And
And
don't you think we have lost the whole meaning of sex along the way? We've
yeah,
lost it. It's no more uh, that thing between a husband and wife. It's
hmm
just, it's not like that anymore.
yeah,
And it's there again. I think we have lost so much. There's nothing special. What's special about sex now? You can have sex with 50 different people, experiment, male, female, do it. And at the end of the day, it is not fulfilling. It
yeah,
cannot be. And I beg to differ with anyone who says it's very fulfilling. It's not.
yeah.
The
Strips away.
emptiness, and I
Yeah,
think women feel a very big emptiness because we are programmed to need love in the true respect. And I think that's what's happening a lot. Women need attention. They're going to get it from young teenage boys if
absolutely.
they,
And teenage
yeah.
boys, I was
Oh, they'll
I was a
do it.
teenage boy.
Yeah,
You
right.
know,
Well, yeah,
um, I
exactly
remember,
right.
and
Yes.
I remember hearing classmates talk about teachers, and you know, people people may
Excuse
not
me.
they may not want to hear it, but it's
It
that's the
happens.
kind of
Come
talk
on.
that's
It
going on.
is. It is. So,
Teenagers, and I'm talking like 16, 17,
right.
18 years old. Um, you already have people whose hormones are raging.
Right.
Then chances are very good that they've been very exposed to pornography, a lot of it,
Yeah.
violent pornography.
Yeah.
And then they're looking for attention because they're
Right.
teenagers and their brain is not
Yes.
fully developed,
No.
not by a long shot. And then you have a teacher who has power, who has position, who has authority over those kids. And you and I were talking, a lot of these teachers, I know at our schools, a lot of them are, I mean, fresh out of college.
Sure. They're young.
21 years old.
Yeah.
It's just a recipe for disaster.
It
And
is.
I'm not
Really is.
saying it's the student's fault. I would never say that. Clearly, I mean 100%. It's always the teacher's fault. But we have created this recipe for
Yeah, we
disaster, and
created
nobody's addressing it. We've so over sexualized
Right. I
and
agree.
normalized the over sexualization.
I don't know how you swing it back. And I think that's the problem we're going to be seeing very, very soon. How do you swing the pendulum back? How do you get it back? How do you undo? Once the eyes have seen and you
Yeah.
have experienced, how do you turn it back then?
Yeah,
How,
I don't
how,
know that you do. I think
don't know that
I
you
think
do
really
either.
it's I think as far as what we do as parents is that we talk very openly with our kids, and that we talk to them about sexuality and not leave that up to the schools, because they're really screwing this up. And that's both ends of the spectrum. You have
Right.
schools who don't talk about sex ed at all,
Right.
and I think that's wrong.
Right.
And then you have others that let teachers twerk in front of their students dressed in a dress, and they call that art, Fine Arts Week.
Yeah.
And I think the guy might have. I don't know. I didn't really read the article that closely because I just wasn't real interested, to be honest. So bizarre. But I don't think that he got fired. But there was a lot of public pushback from the parents, and the school put the statement out. This year, an MHS teacher performed a routine in drag as part of the staff talent show. The school received one complaint about the performance from a parent. Bull.
Yeah.
I'm calling
right.
bull
Oh,
on that
yeah.
one.
One complaint only.
The school is reviewing protocols and processes going forward to make sure all perspectives are considered. What the crap kind of statement is that?
I don't know.
A statement that I would have put out is, we canned this guy. Like, he thought he was going to get away with that. We're not letting him within a 6-mile radius of your kids.
Everybody is afraid of offending somebody
Yeah.
and taking a stand. And I think we need to get back to basics, people. We need to check ourselves out and really understand what we believe and stand up for it.
Yeah.
And for our children, really.
Yeah. I mean, again, I would have the same problem if a male teacher wearing a Speedo got up on stage
Right.
and
Oh, yeah.
did this, or a
Right.
female teacher, with a big push-up bra and a short little mini skirt was shaking
Well,
it
I'd have to ask
in front of my
again, what
kids.
would the purpose
Exactly
be?
right.
What is the purpose of this?
It's just so bizarre.
Yeah. Oh,
It's all so bizarre.
fine arts, I guess, right?
Yep. Maybe we're just not cultured
Yeah,
enough.
I guess.
But I say it constantly that it's up to us parents to communicate with our kids and let them know what they're going to be exposed to. And
Right.
we run into that a lot, with our kids and the ages that they are. They're already exposed to a lot of stuff, and they come home and they ask questions about certain things, and that's up to us as parents to, first of all, to let them ask the right
Right.
questions, but then to tell them, like, you're going to be exposed to this and a lot more. You're going to be exposed to drugs. You're going to be exposed to all kinds of stuff, sexually explicit material. You're going to be exposed at some point. Statistics are pretty strong that you're going to have a teacher, somebody who you admire and you love and you respect, who is going to cross boundaries and do things that make you extremely
That's
uncomfortable.
really hard for me to understand because back in the day, teachers were teachers, and there was a big, what do I want to say, space between the student and the teachers. The teachers were expected to behave in a certain way. I'll call it behavior. And the students were. There was such a respect. You wouldn't talk back to a teacher. You wouldn't say tainted things to a teacher, nor would the teacher. And if the
Yeah,
teacher did, that was just simply wasn't tolerated.
yeah.
And today,
But I mean, there were other kinds of abuses. There was the physical abuse, and
right?
the paddling and
No,
whacking
and
kids with
yeah,
rulers, and
yeah.
so there were different kinds of abuses. But yeah, I mean, as far as sexually being hypersexualized, yeah,
No.
it wasn't okay. It wasn't
In fact, the
acceptable.
joke was we had school marms, the ladies dressed in the long dresses and when you think about school teachers back in the day, you think of Little House on the Prairie, that type of thing. But it's changed. Everything is we live in a changed world. We need to learn how to adapt, how to keep our kids safe, bottom
Yeah,
line.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
mean, it legitimately is up to us.
Right.
We cannot entrust our kids to the school and say,
No.
well, that
My kids
they're
are
the
safe for
professionals,
yeah, no.
because a lot of teachers and staff don't act very professionally. And the reality is, once we drop our kids off, they're out of sight, out of mind. We do
Right.
not have
Right.
any more control over our
It's
kids.
frightening.
They're
Yeah.
left to fend for themselves.
So, as parents, your job, my job, we're to teach our children and keep that line of communication open, wide
Absolutely.
open.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I really do think we can make schools a whole lot safer if parents step in
Right.
and start teaching their kids. And, and again, like, we're not teaching intolerance and things like that. I'm just saying,
Not
like,
at all. And I
at
don't
some
think
point
you
you have to
even
draw a line and
hinted at
say,
that. Right. Exactly
like,
right.
over sexualizing my kids,
It's not
it's
acceptable.
not okay.
Right.
And teaching my kids that it's normal to be hypersexualized in pre-kindergarten is not
Not
okay.
okay. No.
So, yeah, I want to know. I want to know as a parent, and we have a right to know as a parent, what the school is teaching our kids about sexuality at what age.
Right.
And we ought to be asking those questions as parents.
Well,
And
we need to ask those questions and be active in the lives of our children and in the life of our schools. Our schools are the hub of every community. They truly are. Our schools and our churches. We need to be active in both.
I would say have a relationship with people at your
Yes.
schools too. And I'm
Right.
not talking about, like, going in and blowing up a school board meeting and like
No.
screaming at
Be
the top of your
involved.
lungs. And
No,
I'm not
be
talking about doing that.
involved.
I'm
Yeah.
talking about just make it a
Helping.
point to know your kids' teachers and to develop a relationship with them and to have that kind of reciprocal
It used to
relationship
be,
where you can
and I don't know
talk.
if this has changed. Every parent had the right to sit in on a classroom.
Yeah, they don't do that anymore,
I thought maybe that was taken away when I was on
which is probably a good thing,
school board.
honestly.
Parents could sit in the back of a classroom and observe, which
Yeah.
I kind of liked that to see what was going on.
Yeah, I think that opens up a whole another host of problems.
Yeah.
But,
Oh
it's,
boy, what did we solve today, Jimmy, on this
well,
podcast?
yeah, I mean, just
We
have an
stirred
awareness.
we stirred a pot. We got people thinking. I guess we got you all thinking. We need to step up to the plate and be parents. We
Yeah,
really
have an
do.
awareness and,
We
and,
do,
and
yeah.
again, communicate with your kid, let your kid know what they might expect at school. And I would say do routine checks on their devices.
Oh, yeah.
Because this is the gateway to
It
school
is,
teachers.
yeah.
And I've read countless articles. When you have teachers, male or female, that start sexually abusing one of their students, regardless of the age, it begins with personal, private
Oh, yeah.
communication.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
when your kid has a phone or any kind of device, I don't care what kind of electronic device it is in their hand, you need to know what apps are on it. You need to know, you need to do routine, unscheduled checks,
Yes,
random
for
checks,
sure. Yeah.
check messages, and just make sure that teachers aren't abusing your kid and sending explicit
Right.
images and messages to your kid and asking your kid to
boy.
hang out after
Right,
school.
right.
And, it shouldn't be happening. And unfortunately, it happens a lot, and parents don't know until it's way too
School
late.
used to be the safest place next to a church that you could keep your children.
Now, neither one of them is safe
No,
at
no.
all.
So we need to be aware, parents.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
So anyway, yeah, take proactive steps and communicate. We really, really can start shutting this
Oh, yeah.
spigot off.
We need to.
And start shutting teachers down that are potential abusers or abusers. So that's that. Thank you for tuning in to this episode, and we will catch you next round.
Thanks again for listening to today's episode. A special thank you to our patrons who make this podcast possible. Please help us get the word out by searching for the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to hit subscribe and rate the show. Please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron and check out the rewards our patrons receive.